Hey, welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday morning. Hopefully, we're having a wonderful start to the week out there. And we've got a good bit to talk about from what will soon be Ernesto to potentially some active weather back home with severe weather and potentially a pretty good cold front going into the later part of this week that could try to rush in some fall air. And we'll talk about a couple other things as well in today's video. Now, if you're new here, well, welcome. My name is Gerald. I'm a meteorology student at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and I appreciate you joining me here for the forecast as, again, we take a look at a couple different things on the map here. Now, if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It always means the world to me that you're returning. And everyone, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely do that. Like the video and comment. Let me know what you're looking forward to this fall. Personally, I'm just looking forward to some nicer air in football. Which, I'm sure a lot of you will probably agree with that. But let me know personally what you're looking forward to as we kind of round out summer here, getting towards the middle of August already. So, pretty exciting stuff ahead. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and jump on right into the forecast. Actually, before we do that, I'm going to throw in a little bit of information here. I have had a couple of comments asking me why I'm wearing a backwards hat. And basically, just to let you know, if I'm ever wearing a hat backwards, I was just too lazy to brush my hair at that moment in time. Now that will change once school starts next week. I'll kind of have to brush my hair to look a little more presentable. But this time of year when I don't really have much going on and I don't have anywhere to go, I use the hat. So anyway, with that said, now we'll start talking about the weather. But I figured I'd throw that in there real quick because I had a couple questions on and off of YouTube about it. So now let's take a look at satellite imagery here, and we're looking at a couple different things here. This is potential tropical cyclone 5 currently moving towards the Antilles Islands. And has stayed relatively steady in its organization over the past 24 or 48 hours. Hasn't gotten really much more organized and hasn't really gotten much worse looking at the same time. But the National Hurricane Center is expecting this to become Ernesto sometime today or tomorrow as it moves towards the islands here. Now, Ernesto, or what will be Ernesto, is going to bring impacts to those areas. Also, we're watching Bermuda with both eyes as this could be a major hurricane near the island. Also watching our friends up in eastern Canada, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and those general areas even up towards Newfoundland could see some impacts out of this. Also, you folks in the northeastern United States, right now it looks clear, but there's a couple things I'll show you in the steering currents that could point to the potential of this storm may try to get a little bit closer than we would like, and I'll show you that at some point moving on towards the middle of the video. But that's what we're looking at on satellite right now. If we zoom in a little bit more to kind of the interesting stuff here, if you will, just in the main development region of the Atlantic. Again, this is potential tropical cyclone 5. That's one big one we're watching. Another wave behind it, and I know it's hard to see, but coming off of Africa, we've got another big time wave right now that is kind of got the field loaded right now. Now, our models really only developed this one, this first one, but we've got to watch out because we're getting to that time of the year that development is more and more likely in this part of the Atlantic. So should one of these other waves, overperform or the environment become a little bit nicer than maybe the models expect, we could see some development. Right now, again, what would be Ernesto and will be Ernesto here soon enough is the main culprit on the field. And we also have a cone. Now that we do have a potential tropical cyclone, we do have that cone for it as well. So again, the latest here, this is right now moving pretty quick. It's moving about 20 to 30 miles an hour towards the west here. So a very fast moving tropical wave right now, still expected to stay just a potential tropical cyclone until overnight tonight into tomorrow, expecting that upgrade to either a tropical depression or tropical storm as they get near Guadeloupe and into Antigua and Barbuda, into the Nits and Nevis Islands, Anguilla, and these other islands out here. Again, if I mispronounce any of these islands, I do apologize. I need to brush up on some geography here. It's ultimately just my South Carolina coming out, I guess, in me a little bit. But anyway, after it does get there, and I should mention all those islands I just mentioned, if I didn't butcher the name completely, do have tropical storm warnings in effect for those potential tropical storm conditions. And again, the storm would likely be over you during the morning and afternoon of Tuesday. Now, after that, next up on the list would be Puerto Rico, the British Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands. And we also have tropical storm watches up for all of you folks, as again, those conditions are likely to deteriorate as the storm gets close here. Probably sometime Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon, we will see those impacts. Now, after that, that's when things get interesting now. The good news is, after Puerto Rico, The storm is expected to turn north before Hispaniola or the Bahamas. Now, don't completely rule it out. Because again, some of our models, generally speaking, the weaker this storm stays in the near term, the further south it is expected to track. So if this storm continues to struggle to organize, and let's say we don't even get a tropical storm until the storm is kind of at this latitude, then there's a chance it may be pretty far south and may even clip Hispaniola and the Turks and Caicos. Now, that's not the forecast right now, but it is a possibility that we'll want to watch out for. But the latest from the NHC again suggests that this will become a tropical storm near the islands here and then move through Puerto Rico as a tropical storm. Now, after that, the good news is there's no land really between Puerto Rico and what would be the next stop for the storm, which is Bermuda. So the good news for that is obviously we'll see no impacts during the middle of next week. Again, this would be Wednesday all the way up until next Saturday early in the morning. The bad news is, though, that's plenty of very hot ocean for the storm to get its act together and strengthen on approach to Bermuda. So, latest forecast from the NHC, again, leaving Puerto Rico as a strong tropical storm and up to near major hurricane status come early Saturday morning of next week, just south of Bermuda, and Bermuda now in that cone. Now, the good news for Bermuda, and you folks who live there are probably pretty familiar with this, is you're such a small island, it's going to take really a pinpoint track to bring this thing right over you. But even if the storm is here or here, you'll still see some of those outer band impacts that could bring problems. So, still watching it for you folks like a hawk for sure, and we will continue to do that here in the future. Now, latest spaghetti models. These are brand new off the press here. Again, most of the models bring this right through the northern islands here into the Virgin Islands and then near Puerto Rico. Some of them, again, a little closer to Puerto Rico. Also, some of them, again, taking that southern track as a weaker system and bringing this close to Hispaniola. But either way, they all end up in the same location. Here's Bermuda. I'll circle it for you. Most of the models bringing this up in that general direction of Bermuda. Now, whether that's to the east of the island, to the west of the island, or potentially right over the island, that's still up for debate. We'll really just have to watch it. It's kind of impossible to get the exact pinpoint track, 5 to 7 days out. But models are in pretty good consistency up to that Bermuda point. Now, intensity-wise, that's another thing we'll have to watch for. Most of our models strengthen this to at least a hurricane. The yellow line and up are models that bring it to a hurricane. That red line and up are models that bring it to a major hurricane. So not a ton of models getting it into major hurricane status right now, but a lot of our operational model runs are. So we'll see. I think, again, bare minimum, this will be Hurricane Ernesto. Still, I think a good 40 to 50% chance this will become major Hurricane Ernesto somewhere between Puerto Rico and Bermuda. As it really taps into that warm ocean. So we'll see. But again, either way, a strengthening storm is the forecast here throughout basically the next week at least. All right, rainfall intensity and all out of the storm system. Again, it's pretty good rainfall expected here from the Dominica up through Guadeloupe, Antigua, Barbuda, the Nitsa Nevis, St. Martin even, and St. Croix could see some pretty good rainfall. 100 to 150 millimeters of rainfall. Puerto Rico, similar numbers, but the southern and the eastern coast of the island here could see a good 150 to 200 millimeters, or about 6 to 8 inches of rainfall. Locally, higher terrain spots could see even up near a foot of rain in those regions. Also, even during or in the south of the Dominican Republic through the capital city there, which I'm blanking on the name of, starts with Sando something, maybe. Again, I'll have to brush up on my geography, but some good rain for you folks as well. 100 to 150 millimeters of rain is very possible in that part of the world. So rain is probably going to be the main threat with this system. Storm surge, it's going to be pretty limited here. We will see a rise in waters, but probably only 1 to 3 feet of that storm surge. So nothing to really write home about. We've seen way higher surge than that through these islands before, but still enough that if you're in a very low-lying area and you got stuff out, maybe bring it up to some higher shore here before the storm begins to move in on Tuesday and Wednesday. Now, wind speeds, another thing we will be watching. Again, tropical storm force winds are possible, especially in the Virgin Islands. I think are going to have the highest likelihood out of all the islands to see those tropical storm strength winds. But you'll notice how this kind of blooms a little bit between Puerto Rico and Bermuda. Again, that's where the storm is expected to really strengthen here. And Bermuda in the path here of those tropical storm winds. But again, just won't really know until we get closer. It's kind of difficult enough to get 100, 150 mile area of pinpoint where the storm will be, let alone the 50 miles or 20 miles however wide the the island of Bermuda is. So tough forecast there for any forecaster in Bermuda. But just know a strong, powerful hurricane will be in the vicinity of you come next weekend. All right, some model guidance here. We're gonna kind of not fly through this, but we'll go through it a little bit here at a bit of a pace. Latest GFS, here we go. This is for our Monday going into Tuesday. GFS is a bit further south in the cone here. Also trending a little bit weaker every model run towards the European. So I kind of thought the GFS might be right with a stronger solution, but the longer the storm takes to get its act together, the more likely it is that this will be a bit of a weaker system, at least at the beginning. So through maybe even the Central Virgin Islands or the Central Antilles here, I should say, could see a track a little bit further south that would bring the core of that rain through you folks. Not out of the question by any means. And then the GFS again gets us into the Caribbean and really just struggles to strengthen it until about Puerto Rico. And at that point, we finally get a tropical storm, that gets closer to 1,000 millibars. But look at how far towards the directions here are tough. Towards the west the storm gets. Again, the weaker it stays, the further west it's going to want to go before it hooks north. So a stronger storm we thought again would kind of hook north further and be less of a problem for people. But the weaker this stays, the more rain we're likely going to see in these regions. Although the good news is the wind speed and the surge would be lower. So here we go. This is Wednesday afternoon. The GFS actually brings us into the Dominican Republic here, clipping the island as a tropical storm. And then gets out of there by about Thursday afternoon and isn't even that far from the Turks and Caicos. Again, here we go. These are the Turks and Caicos. This is the storm, so not that far. Also, just for reference, here's Bermuda, which I'll just keep circled the whole time so you can see it. But after that, then the storm finally does get its act together, gets to hurricane status by Friday, and then kind of just does a bit of a strange track, pulls it north like it's going to go to the west of Bermuda, then hooks it east, and then pulls it north again. And then we end up with a major hurricane next Sunday afternoon near the island of Bermuda. On this latest run of the GFS, a little bit to the east of the island, but still close enough that you'd see some of those rain impacts, some definitely some rough seas impacts for sure, and maybe even a little bit of surge as well. So that's the latest GFS for this part of the Atlantic. We zoom this out a little bit, and here we go. Then the storm gets pulled north, stays a major hurricane for a while, then eventually becomes extratropical and kind of just turns out towards the east, does a little bit of looping, and then is out of here, but still in the forecast 15 days from now, way off in the middle of the Atlantic. So it's one to watch. And again, once I show you the steering currents, I think we'll get a better idea of what exactly we're looking at here. But just know that that is the forecast from the GFS. And like I said, the steering currents, it's not quite as set in stone as this looks. This looks like, an easy fish storm outside of you folks in Bermuda. And even our folks in Canada are probably looking at this saying, all right, it looks pretty good. Don't get entirely, it's good to get excited maybe that these are the trends currently, but we're still a week, 7 to 10 days away. So there are some things I'll show you that might not be quite as encouraging. All right, latest European. European is further north than the GFS on the short run. You'll notice the GFS was in the central part of the Antilles, the European towards the northern part of the Antilles, and continues working on here, again, bringing that rain, those tropical storm conditions through all the islands, pretty consistent with what the NHC forecast showed that I showed you just a second ago. Then after that, again, beginning to strengthen. I just realized I'm also on the 6Z, not the actual model run we need. So let me move this back to the 0Z, my bad. There we go. So same general idea though. Here we go. Storm strengthening after Puerto Rico, getting close to the Bahamas, not quite there, but a strengthening tropical system, and then again really strengthens between the Bahamas and Bermuda, and we once again get that major hurricane on the European here, sideswiping the island and getting in those outer bands and maybe even the eye wall of sorts here come Friday and Saturday. So a little quicker than the GFS model as well, and a little bit closer. So we'll watch that, and then eventually we pulled out north here. Here's the storm, again strengthening, moving up towards generally Atlantic Canada, and gets closer than the GFS. Notice this is this coming Monday into Tuesday. Here's Nova Scotia, and here's our storm. So it's close for sure. We would definitely see some waves. We would maybe even see some outer bands along the coastal regions, but still not a direct impact. Same story for Newfoundland, although maybe, again, a direct impact on this kind of southern island here. I'm not entirely sure, or peninsula, whatever part of Newfoundland that is. If you live there, definitely let me know. But again, not a direct impact on either model. Now, those are two models. I'm going to show you the Icon model. The Icon model it's a strange one because sometimes it gets it right when no one else does, and then other times it's out just taking a walk and has no idea what it's talking about. But it does a good idea here of showing what could potentially go wrong with the storm, steering current-wise, and could potentially pull this closer to the United States or Canada. So, again, up to the Bahamas, should this storm strengthen as we are expecting, the forecast is pretty set in stone from most of our models. Here we go. Here it is. But look what's happening in the steering currents here. We've got actually two troughs that we're watching for. One over the North Atlantic that is trying to pull the storm further north here, and I'll draw the trough axis here and try to draw it a little bit better. So we've got that one, and then we've got another one over the northern United States. That one, little hint here, is going to potentially bring some fall weather and stormy weather later this week to the east half of the country, which we'll talk about in a second here. But so what is generally happening on most of our models is this first trough that you're seeing on the right-hand side with kind of the dashed line through it is picking up the storm and pulling it out to sea. But there's a chance it doesn't. If this trough moves a little bit quicker or the storm's a little bit slower or this trough's a little bit quicker, again, plenty of variables could change that forecast. The storm misses that trough and just kind of slows down until the next trough shows up. And watch what happens here. This is going into next weekend. I'll circle Bermuda again for you just so you can see it, even if I can see it, that is. This is Bermuda. Watch what happens, though. This new trough comes, sucks up the storm, as we often see, kind of similar to what happened with Sandy or Henri. Again, not comparing the storm to those at all, but just, pattern-wise, it's a similar setup. And what happens is, again, it gets sucked up by that trough and brought very close to the east coast of the United States by the time we get about a little more than a week out from now. So this is not a 100%. This is going to, get near Bermuda, then miss everybody else storm. Right now, that's the most likely scenario, yes, but we got to be careful here because, again, even the latest European ensembles are showing this general idea. This is Sunday into Saturday. Here's the storm. Here's that trough. They're not far. Should this trough be a little bit quicker, it very easily could suck up the storm and bring it towards the United States or Eastern Canada. So I just don't want you to think that, this is one of those storms that you don't need to pay attention to anymore, even in the Northeast United States or especially Eastern Canada. You know it firsthand. These storms sometimes can get quite close, even without a trough to bring them back towards you. So that's kind of the latest there on the possibilities with Ernesto. Again, just don't let your guard down all the way because we got a ways to go before this one is set in stone. All right, speaking of set in stone, by the way, if you live in Bermuda, I just saw the Bermuda Weatherstone thing from whatever fort you have there, which I posted on Twitter. I thought was kind of funny. We'll have to use that one this week as we're forecasting this storm. But yeah, so either way, a long way to go with this one. Just don't think we're done. Okay, now back to the lower 48 and what we're looking at here. Radar-wise, again, like I talked about yesterday, we're going to have these complexes of storms that kind of just roll on through this flow. In fact, we had a pretty feisty storm near Fayetteville, North Carolina this morning. It had some pretty nasty rotation. I think even a wall cloud was associated with it. But luckily, I don't think anything touched down, but definitely saw some strong winds and some hail, I think, probably out of that one this morning as well. And this morning in Oklahoma and even into this afternoon, more heavy downpours through this part of the country. Oklahoma City had plenty of rain yesterday. They probably don't want any more. So again, still some active weather out here. We are still seeing flood watches up for southeastern North Carolina from Fayetteville to Wilmington, Greenville, Jacksonville, New Bern, just south of the Rocky Mount area, and even into parts of the Outer Banks here. So again, plenty of rainfall on the way and plenty of river flooding still ongoing in these regions from what is left from those impacts from Debbie. Outside of that, on a national view, pretty quiet, all things considered for now. But I think going later into this week, things are going to change pretty good bit here. And I'll show you why. So this is kind of right now this afternoon. Here's one trough. Again, this is the one that will hopefully pick up Ernesto and bring it out to sea. But this trough is going to hang around a little bit. So we could see some strong storms into the Carolinas the next 2 days, today and tomorrow, as we have enough lift and kind of divergence aloft from that trough hanging around. And we're also, again, going to see kind of some short waves ride down this flow in the mid-levels. So, that could bring some severe weather to portions of the southeast, mid-Atlantic the next couple of days. Keep an eye out for that for sure. But after that, getting into the middle of this week, we get a bit of a ridge that builds back in. This is going to keep things quiet for a little bit, make it hot again, unfortunately, for a lot of us. But look at what's happening out west into the northern Rockies and northern Great Plains later this week. Another trough building And this one as well could, make its way to the east. And you just love to see it this time of year. Look at all these blues showing up east of the Mississippi. This would bring some stormy weather. This would also bring some drier air on the backside as we get towards, luckily, my first week of classes. And I can't tell you, I would love nothing more than a dew point below 65 to start the school year. So will this bring it? We'll take a look here in just a second. But no, this is a sign of more active weather going towards next weekend and next week, or I say next weekend, this weekend coming up, and next week. And also, again, this is a question mark with Ernesto. Will this bring Ernesto back in? We don't completely know yet. It is possible, though. So we will continue to monitor that. Now, latest severe weather outlook this afternoon. Again, we could see some strong storms from Myrtle Beach up through Marion County, South Carolina, Wilmington, New Bern, kind of all those areas that were under that flood watch that I just showed you. Same areas today. Could see a strong storm as a little bit of a short wave is going to move on through. Tomorrow, we'll do it again through much of South Carolina, even Charlotte, Monroe County, down through Columbia, into Charleston, again, Myrtle Beach, Florence, kind of these areas of South Carolina. Could see some strong storms tomorrow. And I think tomorrow we could have some pretty impressive structure with some of these storms. We could see kind of some supercellular looks on radar for sure. Those could dump some big time rain, some heavy or some strong winds, some hail potentially, and lightning as well. That's the most southern thing I've ever said, as well. Sorry, I can't believe I just said that. So yeah, we'll watch that. But again, it could see some strong storms tomorrow. Now, let's move this ahead on radar and take a look at it because I'm kind of going over time a little bit here from what I like to do. But again, this afternoon and into this evening, we still got these complexes of storms back through Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Not expecting so much of a severe risk out of those, but we could see some flooding as we saw in the OKC area just yesterday. But also this afternoon, some showers and storms up into the northeast, less of a severe threat there. The bigger severe threat, again, going to be down here into the Carolinas, where some of these stronger storms could develop this afternoon, have some pretty good energy to work off of, and even a little bit of wind shear. So we'll watch out for that this afternoon and evening. And then tomorrow morning, again, another complex of storms back into the plains. If you're watching in Nebraska, Kansas, maybe Kansas City, more showers and storms. It could bring a small flooding threat, try to work on through, but it's tomorrow afternoon in the Carolinas I'm watching for strong to severe storms. And this reminds me of a year or two ago in June, we had a setup similar to this, a bit of a short wave crossing the mountains, getting some of these storms to fire off the chain, the Appalachia chain, rolling down into the foothills. And again, it could bring some beautiful structure with them, but unfortunately also dangerous weather with that structure. Main threats would be strong straight line winds and some hail. However, cannot rule out a tornado with this setup. It's not entirely impossible to see, so we'll have to watch out for that as well with this setup. And then those kind of move on through overnight Tuesday into Wednesday, and that northwest flow continues. All right, drier, nicer air. Is it on the way? Well, let's find out. So this is this afternoon. Again, still, we've got this heart shape of sorts on the dew point map. We've got some nicer air through the Ohio River Valley and even up into the northeast. However, still muggy and just not fun where we're seeing those rain areas through Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and into the Carolinas. It still does not feel very good outside. Now, if you're in the Carolinas and you're wondering, well, that's not fair, or why are we getting it, and why isn't anybody else? Well, don't worry. Going later into the middle part of this week, everyone tries to get back in on those dew points, especially through the plains. But we may still be holding on to some nicer air into the Ohio River Valley. Trends have been for this air to hold on a little bit longer. We'll definitely hope for that for you folks in West Virginia and Kentucky, Ohio, and up through the Northeast. Could have some nicer dew points through much of this week. Now, it's later in the week that trough I was telling you about tries to work on in, and here it comes. So this is, again, going towards this weekend. Everyone's going to get back in likely on that muggy air by then, but into the weekend, a bit of some drier air on the backside of this trough. Again, it doesn't look super impressive, but it could be something to help give us some relief from that very muggy air deeper south into Alabama, Georgia, maybe the Carolinas. Again, placement will be important, and we'll watch it. But that's something we'll definitely need to keep an eye on. Now, what's causing this? Well, again, it's all that trough, but we could get some low pressure to develop off that trough into the northern tier of the country. And we're getting to that time of year. These mid-latitude cyclones are starting to form. They're starting to become more relevant on our forecasting models. And here we go. Here's one going towards, again, the later part of this week into next weekend. Again, here's Ernesto also at the bottom of your screen. Here is another storm system. Should they try to interact? Again, we'll continue to watch for that. But Either way, again, this storm system develops, brings some stormy weather through the Midwest, the Ohio River Valley, through the eastern half of the country, through the weekend, and then tries to work on through here and some of that nicer, drier air on the backside. So, will it happen? I hope so. We'll continue to watch for it. I'm personally very excited to start forecasting these mid-latitude cyclones again, and especially the snow that they will bring here as we go a couple months on down the road. But, snow isn't even that far away for you folks out in the Rockies, probably only a month, if that, until we start seeing some snow showers in those higher elevations. So it's coming. I'm ready for it. I'm sure many of you are ready for it, and I'll keep you updated here. But again, I appreciate y'all hanging in there. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday morning, and I'll see you all again tonight for that tropical update.